welcome back to this week's episode of the Love Fashionably podcast. I'm so excited that you are joining me here once again. I hope that you are having a great week and things are going well. We are going to jump back in this week to where we left off last week. So if you missed last week's episode, definitely go back and listen to it. Not now, wait till afterwards. I'll fill you in a little bit about where we are picking up, and then you can go back and listen to last week's episode so that it'll all make cohesive sense. But we were talking about the different seasons of life that we go through and about how there's good times and there's bad times, as we all know, and talking a little bit about the Song of Songs and the interpretation of going that in what we were talking about last week and what I'll briefly reference, where in this, what's the word I'm looking for here? This, whatever. We're just going to move on. I can't think of the word right now. It's been a long day. Interpretation, I guess. So the bride is like us, the church, the bride of Christ, and the groom is Jesus. And so I had this devotional several years ago given to me from a friend. And what I really loved about it was her taking a part of this book as those things in mind, and we were looking at chapters 3 and 5, and where the groom has given the bride a request. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't a you have to do this. It was a offer that was just placed in front of her, and she had the choice to either accept or to not. And in chapter 3, we talked about how she was given the offer and she chose not to follow her groom. And then they, meet back up. Everything's fine. Then there's the marriage ceremony, which in this case we kind of referenced is kind of like how it is when we join our lives with Jesus. And then a little bit more in chapter 5, he gives her another offer, another request to come and to do something a little bit different. She'd kind of been sitting in the kingdom and taking in all of the riches of the kingdom, if you will. I know a lot of the times we've talked about this before in America, it's so hard to understand this concept of a kingdom because we don't have kings or queens, royalty, but, Jesus is our king, and when we become saved, we are grafted into his kingdom, and so we get the benefits of the kingdom because we have access to the king. And so she has been enjoying that time of relaxation, and he gives her this call because she is awakened. She has accepted her role as the bride, but there are daughters of Jerusalem, people around her that have not yet accepted their calling of being that awakened bride. And he's asking her to go walk among them and to be among them and to kind of help awaken them, which, as we know, is our call as Jesus' bride. Like, that wasn't just for Song of Songs a long time ago, ancient in the Bible. And then we referenced in Matthew, it wasn't just for them, this old thing. No, it is very now, very present. That is part, like you get saved, and I don't know if you think like it's just going to be like this easy road. It's obviously not always easy. There are times, there are good things, but there's also a call to help Jesus in his calling. He's equipped us. He wants us to help him to reach those around him because Sometimes the package or the way that you were reached and you got saved might not be the same way that is going to reach someone else that you encounter day to day. And Jesus wants to work through you. There's a quote that I have written in the back of my Bible, and it says, I'm a connector to the current, to the power of Jesus Christ. Just like how these lights have to be plugged into the power source in order to get it and the camera and everything to turn on for us to be able to communicate. We can be that connector to the power, and then let, Jesus shine through us. And so she's kind of at this moment. And I read this last time, and I really do just love it because she's at this crossroads. And I think a lot of the times we have this same crossroads in our lives. And so I just kind of want to bring this back up because I think a lot of the times we think that we hesitate the way that she does, because she thinks that she's going to have to go back and be an old person or an older version of herself to reach these people around her. And it says, but he's not asking her to go back. He's asking her to go forward. This time she would walk among them as one who knows what it is to be loved extravagantly and unconditionally and is equipped to show that same love to them. He is answering her prayer for the wind to blow on her garden so that its fragrance may spread abroad. Kind of, again, that connection part, that her fragrance, her love of Christ can spread and blow onto those that are around her. I do believe that God places people around you and in your life when you're walking this road with Him and you're listening, that there are people that He wants you to reach. But we have to be open and we have to be awake. And so that's kind of where we were leaving off. This idea of being awake. We saw in Song of Songs how the groom identifies and recognizes that she is awakened to being the bride. But there are daughters that are not yet awakened to being the bride. And then in Matthew 25, it's where we left off. It's the last thing I read, so I'm going to read it again in case you don't remember, because that's okay. It was a week ago. I would not either. So we're going to pick back up Matthew 25, verses 1 through 13. It says, Then the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 bridesmaids who took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish, and 5 were wise. The 5 who were foolish did not take enough olive oil for their lamps, but the other 5 were wise enough to take along extra oil. When the bridegroom was delayed, they all became drowsy and fell asleep. At midnight they were roused by the shout, Look, the bridegroom is coming. Come out and meet him. All the bridesmaids got up and prepared their lamps. Then the 5 foolish ones asked the others, Please give us some of your oil because our lamps are going out. But the others replied, We don't have enough for all of us. Go to a shop and buy some for yourselves. But while they were gone to buy oil, the bridegroom came. Then those who were ready went in with him to the marriage feast, and the door was locked. Later, when the other 5 bridesmaids returned, they stood outside calling, Lord, Lord, open the door for us. But he called back, Believe me, I don't know you. So you too must keep watch, for you do not know the day or hour of my return. And so again, where we were kind of leaving off is the idea of where I was kind of talking, and I'll go back to where we had in Alabama recently had a very bad severe weather day, and we were given probably about a week's notice. And so, every day that's what was being talked about. It's what you would see all over social media. And so it was giving you time to get everything in order and to get prepared for this day, because you don't know, the day, but you didn't know, and you had this wide time frame, and you didn't know when it was coming. You didn't know the hour, you didn't know the moment, because things could, they said with the atmosphere and everything that was the way it was lined up, it could pop off at any moment at any time. So you just had to be ready and prepared for any moment. And that's kind of like how I can imagine what those bridesmaids were supposed to be. They were supposed to be ready and prepared, and we see that 5 of them are and 5 of them are not. The 5 that were prepared, what did they do to have them prepared? They brought things extra. I don't know if you're an overpacker. I am most definitely an overpacker. Like, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to have enough just in case. Even if I'm going to the other side of town, or like if I'm going on a trip. Well, I think about all the things that could go wrong. Okay, well, what happens if my flight's delayed, if there's something that's canceled? What if I have to stay longer? So I've got to be sure that I pack extra just in case. And then, of course, while you're there, you have to have options. You plan your outfits ahead, but you're going to need options because something could come up. And so these 5 bridesmaids that were prepared, they were your overpackers. They brought the extra. They made sure that everything was there, ready and prepared. And then you had the 5 that only brought just enough. Well, what happens when you bring just enough? You always want something that you left at home. That's what happens when you don't overpack. And this is a silly illustration for a very serious moment in time that is coming, because this is really referencing Jesus coming back for his bride. There is a time, if you aren't aware or if you have forgotten from the mundane life that we live, this routine thing, that Jesus is coming back, and he's coming back for his bride. And we don't know the hour, we don't know the time, we don't know, but he's saying loud, now you need to be prepared. And that is this illustration. And also for the ones, again, kind of back to the bride, there's a time where you are awake and prepared, where you can help wake up and prepare others. And this very astute pastor, Pastor Brad Graydon, who, if you don't know, that is the B and the G in BGTV Studios. He started this studio and everything, but before that, he was leading a church, and I was attending, and he actually preached on this. And that's kind of where this whole thing birthed. Everything that you're seeing right now was birthed out of that whole idea of wakening the bride, because a lot of the times, or most of it is awake. And so just a few notes. I was looking back over the sermon that he preached many years ago, and just a few notes where, in order to wake up, you have to first know that you're asleep. Well, how do you find out if you're asleep? Or there might even be parts of you that are awake and parts of you that are asleep. Well, you need to pray and ask God for for that revelation. It's not necessarily somebody. There could be somebody in your life that may help you. But a lot of times, we've talked about this too, that God says that he prepares a table before you, and at that table is expected to be you and your king. And so the answers for a lot of the stuff that you're needing in your life, a lot of the times we try to pull up other chairs and get other people to sit at the table with us to kind of give us answers and revelation. And while that's fine for a moment, they have to leave, and everything is right there with you and him. And so that is where, you need to spend that time and to find out, well, where are you asleep? Where am I awake? Am I just fully dead asleep to all that's going on around me and God's plan that he has for my life? That's fine. It's not to be a moment of condemnation. It's a moment of revelation and of feeling that conviction, and to start to wake up those different parts of you. And so then once, you are awakened, then that is where that comes in, to where we can help wake up others. We saw the Song of Songs. The bride, she had to wake up and accept her role as a bride. She had to go through 3 and 4. Chapter 4 was very important. So she probably wouldn't have got the offer for chapter 5 if she hadn't had that bride, that union with the groom in chapter 4, because she had to accept her role and her identity in who she was in order to do that. And I think a lot of the times that can be really hard for us, because we just tend to be very insecure. Especially as women, we tend to notice all of the things that we aren't and don't see all of the things that we are. And that's why it is important. That's where, you have that table with you and the king, and you allow him to tell you the things you are. But that's when you can pull up those godly friends that he's placed in your life, those small groups, those different people that he has around you that can speak that into you, because that can be so important, to have those people around you that are able to call out those things in you that you don't yet see. And that can help to awaken you into your identity and who you are. And then this is a note again from that sermon. It says, you are already righteous when you are already, let me try that again. You're already righteous, then you're already worthy to wake up the bride. So a lot of the times we think, well, we're not good enough, we're not worthy enough, we're not righteous enough, we don't have everything together. I don't know what version of the Bible you read where you notice that the people God chose to use have it all together and then they go and do great things for him, because that's not the version I read. It's people that have part of it together. They're trying their hardest. They get it together. They're able to do great things for God. But then, another part of their life we read later, we're like, oh, it's like there's this part that they're growing. They didn't wait till everything was perfect and lined up to answer the call that God had for them. And that is his call for you today, is he's, pray that he will awaken you and show you where you are asleep. I loved this part again from that message. It says that Brad had said, when the devil puts your passion cold, like that's when you're asleep, that he does it by deception, betrayal, and lying prophets. And that's how the devil likes to work, a lot through deception. And he will try to come in and try to convince you that you aren't good enough to go help Jesus on this amazing call to go help wake up the bride of Christ, because that's the opposite of what he wants. He wants everyone to be asleep. And it doesn't take long to look at society and know that there are a lot of people still asleep that really need you. And how does that start? That just starts with the people around you. Helping them wake up, just doing life with them. It doesn't even have to be like super weird. Like, you don't have to go and be like, are you asleep? Do you need to wake up? Like, Jesus is coming. Like, you can do that, but you can also just do life with them and encourage them and be that voice of that they're worthy, and call out the things that you see in them that God sees in them, and to help them awaken as you do too. I was going to kind of close it out. There was this song, and I wrote it down because we're not going to play at copyright issues and all of that, but it's from a few years ago. It's called Seasons. It is from Hillsong. And I've got to take it. I do have it written down. There it is. There's several lyrics in there. And it starts off, and I feel like it's a very good kind of way to wrap up this 2-part Seasons of Life little series. I keep calling it a series. I can't think of a better word. But where we were just talking about how we all go through different parts of life. Last time I had mentioned in the last podcast, the thing that this was all kind of birthed out of is I felt like God was telling me, or had told me a couple weeks ago, that I was in a winter season. And we know that in a winter season, things aren't dead. They're just in hibernation, if you will. They're waiting for the next season to come. Because without winter, there can't be spring, there can't be these beautiful blossoms and harvest time and everything. And just a few few lines from this song. It starts off, it says, like the frost on a rose, winter comes for us all. Oh, how nature acquaints us with the nature of patience. Like a seed in the snow, I've been buried to grow, for your promise is loyal from seed to sequoia. And then he goes on to say, though the winter is long, even richer the harvest it brings. Though my waiting prolongs, even greater your faith for me like a seed. And my favorite part is down here. It's in the bridge of the song, and I'm going to read it. And it says, I can see the promise. I can see the future. You're the God of seasons. I'm just in the winter. If all I know of harvest is that it's worth my patience, then if you're not done working, God, I'm not done waiting. You can see my promise, even in the winter, 'cause you're the God of greatness, even in a manger. For all I know of seasons is that you take your time. You could have saved us in a second. Instead, you sent a child. So just to feel like that just kind of wrapped it up. You know, a lot of the times we talked about our seasons, we were wanting them to change. We're wanting them to go by fast. If you're in a hard season, if you're in a good season, you want it to last a really long time. Or sometimes you're always looking back over those old seasons as you grow up. We don't get older, you know, we're just aging wiser. But you're looking back over those seasons and you're like, oh, I remember that time, or I remember that thing. And you're trying to get back to that and bring it back. But the call is to go forward and to go forward into what God has for you next. And if there's times that if you're in a winter season and there needs to be patience a little bit longer for the next time, then I pray that you would have the patience to stay and not to rush to make it happen, because, oh man, if you try to rush to make it happen, then you would have to be the one to stay in it. And although God can help you and be there with you, that's a lot of work. Then if you are patient and you wait for Him and allow Him to build those next parts and those next seasons of your life. Again, thank you for joining me on the Love Fashionably podcast. We want to always thank BGTV Studios for the host of this podcast. Also, a lot of great wisdom and nuggets for this week's episode. Be sure to follow BGTV Studios on all the social media platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and like, comment, save, subscribe, all those things, because if you don't know, I am a social media blogger, and those things make a big difference. They allow them to come up on your feed so you're not missing things. And again, if you watch us, you find us YouTube, Facebook, you can also listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can find me, Love Fashionably _ on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, although I'm not posting much on there, but I am over there as well. Hope you all have a great week, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.